Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for tuning in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I am your host, Sergeant John Perrine, Public Information Officer for the Indiana State Police, Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you each week by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. For more information about our sponsor, you can visit them online at www.indianasfinest.com. Now, you may recognize my guest today, one, because he's always on the show. And he's a fireman. His name's Mike Pruitt. He's a captain with the Wayne Township Fire Department. Thanks, Mike.
Hello, hello. And
more recently, right in front of me is recently crossing over from the field of a reporter at RTV6 in Indianapolis to now going to be a civilian PIO for a police department in Metro Chicago. So welcome, a suburb of Chicago. Yeah. I shouldn't say Metro Chicago.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So Paris Lubell. So Paris, what's the next adventure look like for you?
So I'd been a reporter for as long as what has it been, 7-8 years now, and wanted to do it for as long as possible, but wanted to kind of shift over to telling messages of police departments and public safety people. It's important to get their message out there, especially when they're doing good things, and found an opportunity that is a little bit different for me, but up for the challenge.
So my last 3 years as the PIO, and I think you were fairly new to the market when I was a new PIO. I can remember one of the first phone calls from you, and I just remember telling myself that this kid is a hard-working kid. Like he knows stuff that I don't know how he knows, but he does, and I'll tell you, he's not given up. And so I always respected your work ethic and your ability to get information. Was pretty incredible.
Even when he calls you at 2 a.m.?
There were several 2 a.m. calls, and a lot of times those calls were nothing to do with anything my agency was doing. He just wanted to know if I knew anything about it. So, yes. But that's what I mean about how hard he worked, is he wasn't afraid to ask the questions. He's not afraid to make the phone calls, even if it's to Mike asking about a police situation. He'll ask. He'll ask in the hopes that maybe something, he's asked so many people that he can piece all this stuff together, and before you know it, he's got a story.
John, we have a situation here where we can reverse the roles on him now.
I can't wait.
All these years.
I can't wait until the 2 a.m. phone calls now. Like, how do you deal with all of these reporters who won't leave me alone?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be coming.
So anyway, the future of a lot of large police agencies and maybe even some fire agencies across the country is going to a civilian PIO. So kind of talk about how that's different than having a sworn uniformed police PIO or maybe a mixture of both.
Yeah, I think in most places it works the best is when there is a mixture of both. But I bring in some expertise to the department. I've worked in a newsroom. I kind of know how things operate, whether it's how does video work and how do stations use video and what can they use to be on the air, to knowing what kind of stories they're going to pitch and stories that they want to do and what the important information is. Sometimes there's a disconnect between a newsroom and the public safety agency because they don't know what each other wants, and sometimes just building a relationship and making sure that you're on the same page helps a lot in situations like this. But it allows me to kind of bring in expertise of how a newsroom works and what we're looking for to a police department to better tell the good stories, and also help on some of those major incidents where information needs to get out quickly, but I know what a newsroom and what a reporter is looking for.
And that's important, because when I first took this job, I had zero understanding of how the media operated. You see what you see on TV, but what you see on TV is 10% of what's really happening. And so kind of tell people, how does it work? A day in the life of a standard reporter, and I don't know the official term, but the field reporters that you see, you show up in the morning, you're given an assignment, and you're given so much time to have it done, right?
In a lot of times the newsroom management is looking for the reporter to pitch stories, to look at different issues. At Channel 6, we did a lot of working for you stories, which was helping solve people's problems. So we'd come in, we'd have a 9 a.m. meeting, talk about those stories for the day, kind of work them out as a team to see, is it something we want to pursue? Do we not want to pursue it? And then we go on, work on the day or throughout the day on that story. Sometimes that involves going to somebody's house and getting an interview, seeing what their problem is. For instance, maybe a utility company tore up their yard and they haven't been able to get it fixed. So it's a pretty typical day. We'll go out there, we'll shoot it. Sometimes we stay if it's further away out there on the field, put it together. We have laptops where we edit on, and we'll finish the story out there and then drive back. Sometimes it's bring it back to the station and finish it there as well.
And one thing, and I think Mike can attest to this, is one thing I feel like you've done very well with public safety PIOs in Indianapolis is built a friendship, for lack of a better word, because with that friendship comes trust. And it's really, really hard as a public safety PIO to know, there's information out there and you have it. And is it going to be professionally delivered or is it recklessly going to be delivered? And so having that trust, having that relationship is so important. So Mike, I'll ask you first, is how important is a good, positive relationship with a public safety PIO and a member of the media?
Well, in Paris's situation, like many reporters in Indianapolis these days, they're dual trained. So it's not just somebody that's a talking head. Now, as Paris alluded to earlier, editing video, producing things. And that's something that we as PIOs are trying to learn all the time, is how do we produce material. And that's been great from having a relationship with not only Paris but a lot of other reporters here in Indianapolis, is they teach you things. They teach you how to do that. And so that's, once you get in the newsroom and you learn about the newsroom and you learn how their operation works, then you know why they have deadlines and you know what kind of things, what they're looking for, whether they're just looking for 10-second clips of a video. So getting in the newsroom, getting to know the news staff in our positions as PIOs is huge because we understand each other. We talk the same language.
Yeah.
Any public information officer out there these days, I don't care what community you're in, if you're not making an attempt to get into the local print media or the TV station, the radio station, you're going to be behind the 8 ball all the time. So I think it's very important to build that relationship. And
on the media side, Paris, how important are those relationships with public safety PIOs for the media?
I think they're very important, and especially having that trust where you can have a conversation that's not on the record, maybe just on background, or is this something that we should be looking into or not looking into? I think those conversations are important because at the end of the day, it saves us time of chasing down a trail that might not actually be anything. And sometimes you guys can't talk about an investigation in the law enforcement world. But we also can have that relationship to say, here, this is expected, or here's why this is taking a long time to get the information. Yeah. And that's really important to be able to tell that story, to be able to get information, because sometimes you just can't give the information right off the bat.
Yeah, and you talk about that, some things that we can't talk about. And so what's difficult in my position as a police PIO is amongst my coworkers, a lot of times I'm viewed as the possible mole to the media, right? Somehow the media gets information about one of our investigations. It's stuff that's not quite releasable. That's not me that's releasing that stuff. And you probably know more than anything. You have incredible sources. You often would call me with information that I have no idea how you got it, but it's accurate. And then I'm left to explain in the middle. And so I often tell people, do you think I need to create more work for myself? Like if I tell the media this is going on, tip them off, it just creates more work. And so that's one of the hard things that as public safety PIOs is we're kind of stuck in the middle sometimes. The old Billy Joel song is, we didn't start the fire is kind of the case. We didn't start the fire, but we're trying to fight it. And that's kind of our role.
Well, I think it's important where those relationships are really key, because I can call you and say, instead of just going to the air with a story that came from sources, I can go to you and say, what is really going on? Can we get a response in 48 hours? Maybe hold something.
Yeah.
Because you have to take even sourced information with a grain of salt sometimes. You don't always know if that person knows the same thing. They've maybe just seen internal documentation. They're not part of an investigation or something, where there's many more facts that just aren't out there yet. And somebody in the media, I would never want to hamper an investigation. That's very important to me. So even I may know things about a case and may have an off-the-record conversation or a background question with either one of you, I don't ever report that if that's going to hamper an investigation.
And you said something real important there about hampering the investigation is, as a public safety PIO, police specifically, if you're listening, sometimes telling them why they can't report it is as important of telling them what they can't report, because they do have accurate information. And sometimes you can tell them, hey, that is accurate information, but here's why. Here's how it's going to hamper our case. And like Paris said, they don't want to mess that up. And so sometimes that explanation followed up with the I can't tell you, but this is why, is just as important.
Yeah, I think and you have those by basing everything kind of on that relationship. And because you can have that conversation to know why we can't do something, or it makes a lot more sense sometimes as a reporter. So then I can report back to that newsroom management and say, here's what they're asking us to do. This is why. And then it makes a lot more sense. But just saying you're not commenting really kind of makes it worse, because I can say, well, state police or whatever agency isn't commenting.
Yeah. Now, Mike, we probably, as PIOs in this market, talked with Paris almost daily most of the time.
Daily or hourly.
How often was it that he would call you and be like, I mean, we don't know what his hours are, or if he even really had a job, I don't know, but be like, Paris, are you even working? No, I'm at the gym. Why are you calling me?
When you hear the dogs barking,
yeah.
I'll call you, say, hey, Mike, what's going on? Are you on that fire? And I'm hearing dogs barking in the background, and I'm like, Paris, you at work or are you at home? I'm at home, but yeah, he's always looking for the inside scoop.
He lives and breathes it. I mean, he does, and 24/7. I mean, he's on it. Whether he's on duty or whether he's at home in Michigan, he's still calling you, asking questions. You know.
Yeah, it really is a 24-hour job. I mean, it's definitely a lifestyle being in news, and also in my new role, it is as well. You're 24/7 on call as well when there's a major thing that happens, and you know, it's fun, I guess, to be able to help get information out there. So when there is something big that's happening, you know, even if it's in kind of any scope, it's kind of rewarding to be able to be the person who can get that information out there and then get it digestible for the person who's consuming the media.
Yeah, and you've been very fortunate, I feel like, from an outsider looking in, to work with two other great investigative reporters, amongst all the other great people at RTV6. But, you know, Raphael Sanchez, a legend in our market, kind of working under him, you've had to have learned some things from him.
Absolutely. In the last 3.5 years, he's taught me a lot. He's really been a mentor for me, and that's how newsrooms work. But we've really worked well together, especially on the Delphi case. And I know you guys have worked at State Police just as hard, but when that information comes out, we've really made sure we tell a fair story and never once try to hamper an investigation.
Yeah. So,
Raphael's one of those other guys that, like, he's always right there on the scene.
You never know where he's coming from.
Never know where he's going to show up.
Yeah. You know, and it wasn't uncommon for Paris to call me, and he'd just be like, hey, just so you know, you're about to get called out on this, you know. And most of the time he was right. He knew before I knew.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's having good sources, you know, or just listening to the radio, the police scanner, the fire scanner all the time. And I admit that I'm probably just as bad about some of that as he is.
Oh, you definitely listen to the radio more than I do.
Sometimes.
It's always on. I'm pretty sure he sleeps with it.
Like Bear said earlier, it's a lifestyle for all three of us. This isn't an 8-hour-a-day job. It's a lifestyle. You have to be all in to be effective.
Sometimes, I mean, I know it's very competitive in the news world. So, I mean, you know, we have multiple news agencies here in Indianapolis, and they're all competing against each other. Yeah. It's interesting that I see the things I see this year nowadays between relationships between local reporters that I see through social media, where a lot of local reporters spend time with each other from different agencies. And I always think that's got to drive a news director crazy. You know, it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But it's a pretty tight-knit community in a city like Indianapolis like this.
Plus they work such crazy hours. They're the only ones that are off on the same time.
Well, that's true. But as competitive as they are, you know, it's good to see that those relationships, you know, are built amongst the news business.
So we've got a minute left here, Paris. I just want to say it truly has been an honor. I know that I give you a hard time and we've bantered back and forth, but I do respect you and the work you've done and the relationship that we've built in the last 3 years has been meaningful to me, and I've learned a lot from you, and I do appreciate your friendship and your professionalism all the time. So
yeah, best of luck, Paris, as you move on to the greener side, as we'll call it.
Yeah, Mike and I can't wait until karma comes back around.
Yeah, it's coming. I hear it. It's coming. Karma's coming.
You're going to do a great job up there. I know you will, and we'll be watching you from afar for sure.
Thank you very much, and it's been great working with you guys. I really have appreciated it and helped me out a lot to grow in this market, and I'm very thankful.
So We have 20 seconds left, Mike.
20 seconds, and we can't find something to fill 20 seconds with. Did you thank Tom?
I did thank Tom.
You did thank Tom, so we got that out of the way.
Yeah. So how about we close with this? The Indiana State Police Roadshow has been brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. Thank you for listening.